Leadership is not about how far ahead you stand. It's truly about how deeply you serve. And that one hit me like a gut punch and an invitation to remember, because the truth is, your character will echo longer than any of your accomplishments. So, what if leadership or your leadership isn't measured by your title, but by your character when nobody's watching? I'm stoked to be back. I'm George. Hopefully, you know that. And I'm so honored that you are here. But seriously, today's episode is about being quote unquote in charge. It's not what it's about. It's about becoming someone that people want to follow. And it challenged me just as much as it might challenge you, because there's no finish line to this game. But if this is your first time here, welcome to the family, welcome to the lighthouse, welcome home, because this is the show where we talk about the stuff that really matters. We talk about mindset, we talk about alignment, we talk about leadership, marketing, customer journey, and most importantly, the invisible game behind sustainable success. And I'm grateful that you're here. Welcome to the table. But in today's episode, we're unpacking what leadership really is, not in theory, but in practice. So I'm going to share 5 powerful quotes, 3 transformative leadership principles from one of my favorite pastors, and the exact questions that I ask myself when I realize I'm still making it about me. And by the end, my invitation and hope is that you'll have a new lens on what it means to lead, grow, and serve in every area of your life, from your businesses to your relationships, and if this is applicable to you, to your walk with God. And I don't have a guest in this episode. This is one from my heart, but I reference a lot of people that have had influence on me, from my clients to Rich Wilkerson from Brew Church, C.S. Lewis, Lao Tzu, John Maxwell, Viktor Frankl, and Albert Schweitzer, for both physiological and spiritual credibility, the quotes that I pulled to anchor and resonate this in for myself and with you. And what we have to remember in the current state of the world is that leadership is being tested in this world massively right now. And not by power, but by pressure. What happens when nobody's watching? What happens when it costs you something? Our businesses, our families, our legacy, they don't need more ambition. They need more character. And so what I break down are the 3 signs of character-driven leadership that will stretch you fast in a good way. The quotes that I revisit when I lose perspective as a father, as a partner, as a CEO, and as a coach. And the one prayer you can say every morning that will immediately shift your posture into purpose, or maybe for you, it's an affirmation. But let's talk about what leadership really looks like when the spotlight's off. So let's get into the episode. Today, we're talking about leadership, and I must start with a confession. The longer and longer I'm in this game of life, the less I feel qualified to call myself a leader, and the more I feel like I get to grow and evolve. And so this episode is just from my perspective, my position, my experience when it comes to leadership, and also an invitation for me to consistently and constantly improve. Because here's the truth about leadership. It's not about titles. It's not about applause. It's not about being in charge. It's about truly who we are when no one's watching. Because the choices that we make when it costs us something is what leadership is. And how much of ourself we're willing to give for the sake of others is what leadership is. And today we're diving into what it really means to lead with character, and why, truthfully, generosity, humility, and integrity will take you further than ambition ever will. And so I just got back from an incredible 3-day intensive with my brother Hamza and his team, and I got to watch embodied leadership. And on the flight home, I got an email from a pastor who I love, Rich Wilkerson from Brew Church, and he happened to write an email about leadership. And this email is poignant with 3 big takeaways that was so applicable on the other side of me witnessing it. And truthfully, it served as a reminder for me and an invitation for me on where I get to lead better. Leading in my business, leading with my customers, leading with my children, leading with my incredible partner, leading with my friends. And I took some time and I found some incredible quotes about leadership, 5 of them to be exact. And what I did is I spread the gamut. I found a entrepreneurial quote. I found a biblical quote. I found a psychologist who lived in the Holocaust quote. And I found a couple of quotes that will frame what I think determines what true leadership is. And I get asked a lot, George, what makes the companies that you consult or the entrepreneurs that you consult succeed versus the other ones? Like, what is it? And I had somebody ask me, like, what character traits and what decisions did they make differently? And after taking some time to outline this episode, I realized that my short summaried answer is everything I'm going to cover in today's episode. It's embodying leadership. It's being of service. It's being humble in nature. It's going above and beyond. And it's not thinking that leadership has anything to do with the title that we wear, the one that's on our business card, or the applause that we get, or even this quote unquote notion of being in charge. And outlining this episode exposed part of my weak points in leadership. One of them being that I love serving, I love helping, I love giving. But all too often, I find these little sneaky places where I'm like looking for accolades or looking for acknowledgement, which my Bible, my heart, and my soul tell me isn't leadership, but it's also an invitation for things I get to work on. And so I want to share these quotes with you. So the first quote I found was from C.S. Lewis. And he said, "True humility is not thinking less of yourself. It is thinking of yourself less." True humility is not thinking less of yourself. It is thinking of yourself less. I love that one. I found one from Lao Tzu. "A leader is best when people barely know he exists. When his work is done, his aim fulfilled, they will say, 'We did it ourselves.'" And I had read that quote about a decade ago, and I had summarized it for some speeches I was giving, keynotes I was giving, and talks I said. And I said, the mark of a true leader is when your clients or your team accomplish the result and give themselves full credit. And I love how eloquently he says it. A leader is best when people barely know they exist. When their work is done, their aim fulfilled, they will say, "We did it ourselves." It's about servant leadership and about humility, which is how you create a buy-in culture, which is how you create results for people, which is how you create a movement to really accomplish your goals, because none of us do this alone. Number 3 is from John Maxwell, who I love. I even have his Bible, the John Maxwell Leadership Bible, which, by the way, if you have a Bible, you read your Bible, I highly recommend the John Maxwell Leadership Bible. But he says the measure of a leader is not the number of people who serve him, but the number of people he serves. The measure of a leader is not the number of people who serve him, but the number of people he serves. And we know, and I've talked about this on this podcast, I had Bob Berg, the incredible co-author of The Go-Giver, on this podcast. And that entire book is a masterpiece in leadership and reciprocity and being of service. And this quote embodies that. And then I have one from Viktor Frankl, which, if you have never read, one of his books that deeply, deeply touched my life is A Man's Search for Meaning, for everybody to read when you want to talk about perspective and being a prisoner in a Holocaust camp while also a psychologist. It's so sobering and powerful. But Viktor Frankl says, "For success, like happiness, cannot be pursued. It must ensue as the unintended side effect of one's personal dedication to a cause greater than oneself." I'm going to say this one again because this one is deep. They all are, but this one has levels in it. "For success, like happiness, cannot be pursued. It must ensue as the unintended side effect of one's personal dedication to a cause greater than oneself." And then the last one is from Albert Schweitzer. And it says, "Example is not the main thing in influencing others. It's the only thing." Example is not the main thing in influencing others. It's the only thing. And I wrote those down and I'm going to save those, which brings me to this incredible email that I got from Rich Wilkerson. And he dropped a couple of notes and his perspective from the biblical lens and non-biblical lens of being a leader. And how he laid this out and defined it is really a roadmap to be a leader. But when I say being a leader, it means also being able to build the business of your dreams, being able to serve your clients at the highest level, being able to serve your team and yourself and your family and your friends with the responsibility that comes with being a leader. And so what are his 3 big points on being a leader with solid character? Point number 1 is see more than yourself. Point number 2 is do more than you want. And point number 3, give more than you have. So point number 1, see more than yourself. The way that he summarizes this is you will never lead well if you are only thinking about you. And I know that this is a sin that I face quite often, where I find myself leading, but at times getting sneaky with personal gain or personal agenda. Sometimes as simply as looking for personal accolade. And when I end up in that, I pray my way through it and I shift. Because as I believe it was Viktor Frankl said in that quote, that happiness, that reflection back to me, that success that I'm looking for cannot be pursued. It's only going to come as an unintended side effect of my commitment to somebody else. So seeing more than yourself means having the emotional capacity and the emotional intelligence to weigh in on everybody's perspective of a situation, to weigh in on everybody's life, on everybody's feelings, and making sure that we are considering them and solving for them as the priority over ourselves. In the personal development world, we used to say, give away what you want to get. It's a really short way to summarize that Viktor Frankl quote. But point number 1 on how to be an effective leader and a place to focus and grow is making sure that we intentionally flex the muscle of seeing more than ourselves, which brings us to point number 2. Do more than you want. The mistake that we often fall into is that we trade what we want in the future for what we want right now. We trade what we want in the future for what we want right now. We'll have this vision. Let's say it's a simple vision of, I want to lose 10 pounds for the summer, or I want to, run that race and do my best. And then we have this goal 6 months, 12 months in the future. But then we go out to dinner and we're like, oh, but chocolate cake once, just this one time. And in that moment, what we're doing is we're trading what we want in the future for the desires of our flesh that we want in the present. And then we're not embodying leadership, but we're also not investing in ourselves and leading ourselves with intimacy and integrity and truly, truly doing the best that we can for ourselves. And so sometimes this is going the extra mile. Sometimes this is finishing the day and stepping in to help your team. Sometimes this is going the extra mile for a customer or a client. Because there's plenty of days, and I can speak to this all day, where like the bell rings at the end of the day and I've been on calls and podcasts and I'm like, oh man, I'm done, like laptop off. And I'm like, oh, but I'm thinking about this one client situation. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to take some time and pour into this. I'm going to try to help move this down the mile marker. I'm going to try to help progress on this. And I think that that's the invitation for all of us, is doing more than what we want and not allowing temporary, fleeting, immediate things that we could have right now to get in the way, or I would submit, sacrifice the vision of what we want in any bucket for that immediate satisfaction that truthfully never leads to long-term satisfaction. Which brings us to point number 3. Give more than you have, because giving leads to growing. But as a leader, and here's what I would submit, and this is just my view, take it or leave it. I think every single one of us is a leader. There's just moments that we forget that we're always leading somebody. Because leadership is not when somebody was appointed underneath you, or when somebody put you in a position of power, or somebody put you on stage. Leadership is every single person who interacts with your essence every single day. And as a leader, your character will speak louder than any action you take or word that you speak. The way that you show up, the way that you engage in conversation, the way that you listen, the way that you respond, your faces, your body language, the actions that you take out of a place of service or goodwill or an intention that you have, your character will speak louder, which is your actions, your embodiment of a principle or a process, which we all see, right? Like I can think of hundreds of occasions, and the one that's popping up right now is the amount of kids' birthday parties I go to, because my son's like 8.5, and this is not a call out on anybody, but it's a pattern that I'll notice to where we'll be at kids' birthday parties and you'll see an evolution changing. There'll be a mess, and you'll see a parent who's just going out of their way to very silently not ask for a thing, not ask for help, not say a word, get a trash bag and start cleaning up to help the host. And then you'll see other parents see this and then jump in and start helping as well, because that's character, that's leading by example. And I think what's really powerful of the way that Rich framed this email is the greatest truth that we need to be aware of is that in every moment of every day, our character is being developed by something. Every action we take, every choice we make, every book we read, every song we listen to, every video we watch, every conversation we have, our character is constantly being developed by something. So the question becomes, what or who are we allowing to shape our character? What influences are we consuming that we're allowing to shape our character, or who are we allowing to shape our character, including ourselves? And I was reading the Bible the other day, and I want to say it was like Ephesians 4:29. And it was something along the lines of like, never allow unwholesome thoughts or words to come out of your mouth. But I know for me as an entrepreneur, one of the places that I struggled the most with this was that the moment the day turned off, the moment that I wasn't on a client call or I was sitting on the couch or sitting with God in some quiet time, I would self-deprecate. I would put myself down. I would like actively speak resentment towards myself, or even worse, I would complain about my day. I would complain about people. I would gossip to myself. I would tell these stories in my brain. But all that was poison for me, but that was shaping my character. And so being a leader with solid character, as C.S. Lewis says, starts with thinking of yourself less and others more. And that quote of his is so powerful. True humility is not thinking less of yourself. It is thinking of yourself less. And that's how we move from a place of selfishness to selflessness. And Rich Wilkerson has an incredible story. His church is VOUS Church, by the way. I highly recommend it. I watch it online, VOUS. But he has a saying in his church for him and his church staff, and I love it because you're going to understand why I love it. Their saying is playing the long game. And it's not their saying, it's their mission statement. And they focus on this in every single bucket, because he says that every great leader knows it's not about getting the quick thing, but instead it's about waiting for the right thing. And so when we sow into people, when we sow into others, when we sow into clients, when we sow into team, when we sow into relationships, we're sowing and we're investing, which is what leads to growing. And so the question is like, who can you decide to invest in today, including yourself? I have to be so grateful for my friend Steven Scoggins, who I just had on the podcast. Hasn't come out yet, but you'll hear it soon. And he was telling me his morning ritual every morning as he wakes up, he prays. But the number one thing he prays for every morning, which I have adopted, is, God, please give me one person today that I can sow into and invest into. Could be the barista at the coffee shop, could be a stranger walking down the street, could be a hostess at a restaurant. For me on the flight home yesterday, it was a woman who sat down next to me with a mask, and the Holy Spirit was like, George, say hi. And I said hi, and I met this incredible woman named Allison who had just buried her father 3 weeks prior. and she just needed somebody to listen to. And I listened and I cried with her, and I really didn't speak that much. And she was there with me and my son, and we talked for 20 minutes on a 4-hour flight, and that was it. I told her I'd be praying for her and sending her all the well wishes. And then we were walking through the airport about an hour later, and she came up behind me and tapped me on the shoulder, and she said, "Thank you. You have no idea what that meant to me." And it just feels like a gift when we allow ourselves to invest in our self-leadership, to build our character, to understand that at like the end of the day, what we have is people, right? And the more we invest in those people, the more we lead those people, including ourselves, the results that everybody shoots for, the labels, the titles, the successes, they get created automatically as a byproduct of investing in all the right places. But our identity isn't wrapped up into them and becoming false idolatry or things that we chase. And so that's what I wanted to talk about with leadership today. And as I said at the beginning of the episode, I get to do a lot of improvement with my leadership. My heart is pure. My intentions are pure. I love people. I love helping people. But I would submit there's never a finish line. There's always an invitation to grow. There's always an invitation to sow and invest into ourselves, and sow and invest into others, and sow and invest into our relationship with God, but to constantly keep moving the line and growing our leadership by becoming aware of these things and always holding ourselves to a higher standard. And so my invitation for you today, if this landed, if this resonated, but as you step back from today's episode, I want to leave this on your heart. Leadership is not about how far ahead we stand. It's about how deeply we serve. And so I want you to take a moment today, tomorrow, this week at the latest, and ask yourself a couple of questions and just use it as an invitation to reflect and to grow. So maybe you sit down and you ask, where am I still making it about me? I did this the other day on the trip with my incredible brother, and it was subtle. But they asked when I would get home. And instead of being like, oh, we're going to get home to Montana at, midnight or 1 a.m., I was like, oh man, you'll never believe it. I have 3 flights, a fast layover, then a 2.5-hour drive. And it like hurt my heart when I caught myself saying it, because I realized I was answering that question as a place to make it about me. Instead of just being like, oh, I'm really stoked. Like, we're going to get home to Montana tonight. It's going to be great to travel with my son. And the Holy Spirit wrung it out of my heart. And now I'm aware of it. And it's a pattern that I get to work on. It is a choice in how I communicate, and understanding that the power of our words carries weight. And that was one instance for me. So where am I still making it about me? Another thing to focus on might be like, what's one thing I can do that costs me comfort today, but grows my character tomorrow? What's one thing I can do that costs my comfort today, but grows my character tomorrow? And as of recording this, I am in the middle of starting a fast, because when I get clarity, like what I just shared a minute ago, and have moments in my life where I have big God moments happening, or feels like there's things that I'm unclear on, I feel called to fast. And so for me, I want to eat. I've been thinking about food and praying my way through it. But I truly believe in my soul that this fast that I'm on is what's building my character tomorrow, and allowing me to mute the desires of my flesh, to tune it out and to tune into the present, which has a cost associated. And then the last question that I would leave you to reflect on is, who can I invest in even when it feels like I don't have much to give? It doesn't take much to give a smile, to give consideration, to ask a question and truly listen, to hold the door for somebody, to take the time to text that person you've been thinking about. Maybe even it's you. Maybe it's your parent that you haven't talked to in a couple of months. Maybe it's that person that you're waiting for them to reach out before you respond. But no matter what, we always have the opportunity to give, as long as we make the choice to. But what it's going to cost us is potential short-term comfort for long-term character gain. Maybe it's fitness. And you're like, oh, I just don't feel like I can go on that walk today. But when you choose to go on that walk and you invest in yourself, it's building your character and momentum tomorrow. Because at the end of the day, our character will echo way longer than our accomplishments. I've joked for years that your bank account balance isn't going to be on your headstone, but the results of your character will live on as long as they made ripples in the water. So your character, your choices, your actions, your behaviors, and your state of being will echo way longer than your accomplishments. And so play the long game, choose service over self. And as cliche as it sounds, it's an invitation for me to, and one that I never want to let go of. Let who you are speak way louder than what you say. And if you've listened to this podcast long enough and you know me or have had an experience of me, that last line that I just said is the biggest opportunity for me to continue to grow for the rest of my life. Let who you are speak way louder than what you say. And that's what I have on leadership. And so if I can support you or serve you in any way, hit me up on Instagram, shoot me an email, schedule a call on my calendar for a 15-minute coffee chat. If there's anything to share, any quotes that you love, any questions you have, or anything you have to share with me, just please don't allow this podcast to be an echo chamber. I was on a call with somebody earlier who actually listened, reached out and did a 15-minute call. And he's like, I can't believe you actually got on the call. I'm like, I love getting on these calls, reach out. I love helping. I love serving. And I met this incredible gentleman in Tel Aviv, Israel today. And so I love hearing from you. I love hearing feedback. And by the way, I just feel the caveat to say this. I'm incredibly proud of myself and who I am as a leader and who I am as a man and who I am as a father and a partner. And I'm also incredibly grateful that God has humbled me to find opportunities for me to have a bigger impact and a bigger influence in this world by working on the lessons that I shared in today's episode. And so I hope that it tugs on your heart or shifts your perspective and it becomes a focus for you as well. And so I believe in you. I love you. I appreciate you. So remember that relationships will always beat algorithms. And I'll either see you in the next episode or you'll hear me in your earballs. But either way, we're done for today.